At the end of a very long red-carpeted corridor, I noticed this ball of white racing towards me, and I realized it was Princess Diana. She'd rolled her train up into a ball. She had her slippers in one hand, and she was racing down this corridor, lined with windows, and the diamonds of the Spencer family tiara. What a picture of hope and happiness and love. She had it all.
Fairy tales usually end at this point with the simple phrase, "They lived happily ever after."
The Princess of Wales was a new kind of royal. A new word began to appear in the media's vocabulary, Mania.
The Princess of Wales has agreed to Prince Charles's request for a divorce.
In some small way, I have been of service in return.
Princess of Wales has died in a car accident.
At Buckingham Palace, telegrams of condolence have been arriving from leaders around the world.
Princess Diana was the daughter of an earl. Her father was Lord Spencer, and he was later Viscount Althorp. They had a house on the Sandringham estate, and then when Diana's grandfather died, they moved to the family stately home, Althorp.
She wasn't obviously royalty. She was termed quite unkindly a commoner, although she was constantly rubbing shoulders with royalty because her childhood was based in part up in Sandringham, so she was often on the estate with the royals. Her sister had gone out with Prince Charles, so she knew the family well, and she was essentially circulating in those sort of quite high society circles.
And the Spencer family were quite an ancient aristocratic family, and Diana was very proud of her heritage. I mean, they were actually probably grander than the royal family.
Her father doted on her, and she was really fond of her father. I mean, she used to like to dance, and she was very fond of swimming. She was always up and down to the swimming pool. She danced in the main hall and played the piano. No, she never ever said what she wanted to do. The only time I ever heard her say anything was just in fun. At her sister's wedding, she said, "My wedding will be at Westminster Abbey." And she was 18 then, I should think. But we always thought she'd be Prince Andrew.
It's almost impossible to describe to a stranger or someone who's never met Princess Diana what she was really like. What I usually say is she was as beautiful inside as she was out. But to meet her was something special. She lit up a room, she stopped traffic, and when she entered into a room, everything stopped, and all eyes were on her. I've never met another human being who had that aura, who had that charisma, the same as Princess Diana. The princess changed enormously from the time I met her, aged 18, to the very end. I was there from the beginning to the very end. And I can tell you, in the beginning, she was a shy, naive, quiet girl who knew nothing about the world.
When I joined Buckingham Palace way back in 1976, it was already rumoured that Prince of Wales would be marrying somebody like Princess Mary Astrid or Amanda Knatchbull. There were rumours that he would be marrying somebody else. Lady Diana Spencer was never there. There were always suitors around Prince Charles. He was the most eligible bachelor in the world at that time, heir to the throne of England. So he was never short of female companions. I saw him occasionally with the Queen. He'd stay at Buckingham Palace. His suite of rooms were at the palace. He had his own valet, he had his own household, and he was very independent.
I think it gives one a very useful experience of responsibility and discipline. I think responsibility is the most important thing, is the actual trust that's put in you to deal with other people, and the feeling that they can perhaps put their trust in you as well.
Really, He was searching for someone who could provide him with an heir and a spare. That was his main priority. He was getting old. And the Queen had said to him, "Isn't it about time you settled down, Charles? Isn't it about time you made us grandparents?" So his time was right when Lady Diana Spencer came into his vision.
How well are you coping with all the press attention? Well, as you can see, you can tell. Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us after you. Well, it is, naturally. And you're coping with it all right, though? You seem to be doing very well. I'm still around.
In the summer of 1980, the Queen told me that a young girl was coming to stay for the weekend. "Will you meet her at the front door and show her a room?" "Of course, Your Majesty." So I'm standing in the front hallway of Balmoral Castle on the black and white tiles, waiting for this car to arrive. And out of the car comes a shy young girl that nobody knew who she was. She had one little suitcase in the back. "Is that all you've brought with you? You're here for the weekend. You have to go to hunting, shooting, you have to go to the Gillies Ball, tea parties, lunch parties, and that's all you have." She says, "Will it do?" I said, "I think we'd better take you to her room and find out." I showed her to her room. "Will you stay for a while and have a chat with me? I'm completely out of my depth," she said. So I stayed. "What time do you go down for tea?" 4 o'clock. You go down to the small drawing room. The Queen will pour you a cup of tea. "I don't like tea. I'll make sure she has coffee there waiting for you." Then what happens? I said, "When tea's cleared, you go into the drawing room, and then the Queen will pour you a gin and tonic." "I don't drink." "I'll make sure there's a glass of water there for you." Then what happens? Then the Queen plays cards on her card table. "Do you play bridge?" "Yes." "Then make sure you're sat at the card table to play bridge with the Queen. That's a good way to get to know Her Majesty." Then the Queen will take the dogs into the garden. Maybe you could suggest you went for a walk with her. Also a good time to get Her Majesty's ear. That's what you want to do. This young girl was fascinated by this routine of royal households. And as I closed the door that day, I noticed the name on the door, Lady Diana Spencer.
Generous, very generous. A very good friend.
Did you watch TV a lot? Did you have any favourite programmes?
Crossroads.
Did you share that like?
Unfortunately, yes. I wanted to teach children, and they said, "Why not come along?" So I first started off doing afternoons, and then I took over the mornings and did whole days. But I only worked 3 days a week at kindergarten, and the other 2 I looked after an American baby boy, which nobody seems to realise. It was very special to me.
And she's, got pictures of him and always asks about him when she writes.
Oh, she still writes to you?
Yes, which I think is just marvelous of her. I realize how she finds the time to do it is beyond me.
The princess changed enormously from the time I met her, aged 18, to the very end. I was there from the beginning to the very end. And I can tell you, in the beginning, she was a shy, naive, quiet girl who knew nothing about the world. She transformed. She had to. She had to survive. She was thrown in at the deep end and told to swim, and she learned quickly.
Point did you decide that this was the right lady for you? I mean,
Well, gradually. I suppose towards the end of the summer and the autumn last year, and I began to realise, what was going on in my mind and hers in particular, and all these things help. But it was a gradual business.
did you find it a very hard decision, Lady Diana?
I had a long time to think about it, because I knew the pressure was on both of us. And, well, it wasn't a difficult decision in the end. That's what I wanted.
The most watched event in human history was her wedding day. St. Paul's Cathedral was the setting. The princess was brimming with hope and love for the future. She fell in love with her prince. And there they were, a golden couple. He'd also courted her older sister, of course. Sarah had been a suitor, and on Diana's wedding day, her sister, Sarah, turned to her and said, "I thought all this was going to be mine one day, and now it's yours." There was sibling rivalry in the Spencer household. Diana wasn't meant to achieve. The fact that Diana became Princess of Wales, probably future Queen of England, was beyond the Spencer family to comprehend. It wasn't for her to achieve. The brother should have achieved. It was his estate, not Diana's. So there was always some jealousy coming from the Spencers.
Madam, how are you enjoying married life?
Highly recommend.
How do you like Balmoral as a place?
Lovely.
Have you cooked a breakfast yet?
Don't eat
Living and working with the Queen was far more easy than living with Diana. With the Queen, we always knew that her life ran with routines and protocols and timetables. We knew that breakfast would be 9 o'clock, lunch would be 1 o'clock, tea would be 5 o'clock, and dinner would be 8:15. It was the same every day. It's Groundhog Day at Buckingham Palace. Buckingham Palace is a very large house, has over 200 members of staff, and a hierarchy below stairs that you wouldn't believe, with titles that go way back into the 1600s. So you have fendersmiths, you have women of the bedchamber, you have pages of the presence, and you have pages of the back stairs. You have footmen, you have yeomen of the glass pantry and yeomen of the silver pantry. So all these titles, and people know what they're doing. They all have a specific job. I knew what I was doing at Buckingham Palace. From first thing in the morning till last thing at night, it runs like clockwork. It's never been changed. If Queen Victoria went back to Buckingham Palace tomorrow, she wouldn't be surprised by anything. It's exactly the same. Nothing changes at Buckingham Palace. Everything runs smoothly. With Diana, anything could happen. No routine, no timetables, nothing. We might skip lunch, we might be shopping, we could be doing anything during the day. So life was more exciting with Diana. But the difference between the two worlds was I always knew where I was with the Queen. I always knew where the line was in the sand. I knew when not to cross that line, and I knew to stay and bow. I was a servant, but also a friend and confidant to the Queen, but in a different way. With Diana, it was have a cup of tea with me, have a cup of coffee. Don't just stand there. I used to stand every morning waiting for the princess to come through from her dressing room. And every morning, standing there with a half a grapefruit and a cup of black coffee, I'd bow and say, "Good morning, Your Royal Highness." "For goodness sake," she'd say, "when are you going to stop doing that? It's just me and you in the room. Sit down, have a cup of coffee with me and tell me what's been going on." That was her world.
Sorry, I didn't see you there.
I wish you
Sorry.
that.
Hello. You're hacking the lamp.
I'm happy. I'm having it all this side.
Lovely to see you. So are you on your way shopping?
Yeah.
So the former princess on the world stage did everything as she should, to perfection. But behind closed doors, she was naughty. She was a naughty little girl. She loved to have fun. She loved to giggle. She loved to play practical jokes.
At that time, everybody was saying, "Good luck," and "I hope everything goes well," and "How lucky you are to be engaged to such a lovely lady." And my goodness, I was lucky enough to marry her. And we had many messages. It's amazing what ladies do when your back's turned.
What happened with the princess was she came to us at a romantic, new, fresh time into the royal family. She came to save it in a way because it was on the decline. Her involvement in the royal family boosted the royal family's popularity, lifted the royal family. There was nothing like Diana. There was Diana mania everywhere. Everybody wanted to see Princess Diana.
People were it was just like a phenomenon. I mean, people would scream when they saw Diana. It was almost like Beatlemania.
I think there was an acceptance from Diana that she was going to be one of the world's most photographed women, and she actually grew in that role and became more confident with the press. I think equally she found it both suppressing but kind of a revelation to her in that she had this ability to perhaps manipulate the media, have a bit of a laugh and joke with photographers and reporters alike, and equally use this global presence for good.
The princess's popularity gave the royal family a new lease of life. She arrived in style. And I think without her, the royal family may have foundered. They may well not be here today. She was that mainstay that kept them going.
Now you're about to marry the Prince of Wales, and one day you would, in all likelihood, be Queen. It's a tremendous change for someone, if I may say, of 19 to make all of a sudden, the transition.
It is, but I've had a small run-up to it all in the last 6 months. And next to Prince Charles, I can't go wrong. He's there with me.
Now, the royal marriage was falling apart, and I was Diana's man, placed strategically at Highgrove, placed there to keep the house in order, but also to be there for Diana, to be there as a rock, she later called me. It was difficult for me to tread the path between Prince Charles and Princess Diana. Now, Diana arrived every weekend on Friday afternoon and left every Sunday. But someone else occupied that space in between. And I learned to serve 2 royal mistresses.
I saw the relationship with Prince Charles develop. Remember, she was a shy, naive young girl and didn't know why she was really involved with the royal family. She soon found out. She was there, quite honestly, to provide Prince Charles with an heir and a spare. And if you watch that early footage of that interview in which someone asks Prince Charles, "Are you in love, sir?" and he says, "Ooh, whatever love is," look at the princess's face, because she looks at him in somewhat sort of surprise, meaning, don't you know if you're in love with me? I'm in love with you. Aren't you in love with me? Well, actually, he wasn't. The princess made a fatal mistake. She fell in love with her prince. In the very beginning, she totally adored him.
I remember the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer very well because I was at Buckingham Palace. I was working for the Queen, and the Queen said to me, "You can watch it on my telly. So take the corgis for a walk in the garden and then watch the telly and you'll know when we're coming back." I was responsible for the top table, which was the bride's table, the bride and groom, and of course the Queen and Prince Philip, and the bridesmaids. So I was waiting for the bride to come back. She'd appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. And then, at the end of a very long red carpeted corridor, I noticed this ball of white racing towards me. And I realized it was Princess Diana. She'd rolled her train up into a ball, tucked it under her arm. She had her slippers in one hand, and she was racing down this corridor, lined with windows. And the diamonds of the Spencer family tiara were glinting in the sunshine. And she was racing towards me. Just me and her in one corridor. She was like a galleon in full sail. What a picture of hope and happiness and love. She had it all. And that day, I waited the wedding breakfast in the ball supper room, served the Queen and the bride refused everything. She didn't eat a morsel. And she said to me later, "I couldn't eat a thing, Paul. My stomach was in knots." I was just totally wound up by the day, by the excitement, by the spectacle. She says, "But you know, the most wonderful thing was walking down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral with my father." She says, "But did you ever look at the footage of that?" I said, "I've seen it many times." She says, "Next time you look at it, watch me." She says, "Can't you see me looking from side to side? Can you see me doing that?" Do you know what I'm doing? I'm looking for her. I'm looking for Camilla. And she was there.